Hi, and welcome to Oh My Health, There is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and I want to welcome all of you to our 1 year anniversary show. So we've hit our 1 year mark, and we're at over 125,000 downloads. I am so excited because what that means to me is that our message of hope is getting out into the world and creating this incredible ripple effect. And I love it, especially right now when things are so crazy. So I was thinking, what do I want to do this show about? What do I want to talk about? And I think what I want to talk about is a little bit about my story. So you know a little bit more about me, but why it's so important for me to share my story of hope and why I want all of you to share yours. Because I believe the story you're holding inside of you, the thing that was scary and that was depressing and that was, sometimes shameful, those are the stories of hope that get out into the world once you release them and create change. Your story could be somebody's miracle. So I want you guys to get comfortable with sharing your scars and your bruises and all that stuff that happened to you in your life that created where you're at right now. So one of the things I want to talk about is how I got here today. So those of you who know me know I started out my life as an interior designer. I left it for a while and I worked as a personal assistant, but I went back to what I knew when I stopped doing that after 9 years, and I got back into interior design. I loved it. I love everything about design. I love the way it feels. Putting things together is magical, and creating like this beautiful canvas of art in people's homes and offices and their space. I hated it too. I hated it because I had to work with people, and it was not easy. You try working with a husband and wife who have two completely different ideas of what they're envisioning, and yet you've got to make them both happy. And some of the phone calls, I tell people this all the time, some of the phone calls I would get would be like at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is a true phone call that I received. A 3 a.m. phone call, frantic about the color of blue that was in their kitchen. And they could it just be a little more, like a little yellow and maybe two more shades of green. And this is at 3 in the morning. This could not wait until morning at a decent hour. They need to get that off their chest right then. So I want you guys to understand that your journey takes you where you're going for a reason. Here I thought I did not like working with people, never wanted to work with people. And now it's the joy. It's my total joy is to work with all of you, to connect with people, but on a completely different level, right? So on my journey, you guys know I have 4 children and they're not babies. I have a 42-year-old, I think, and all the way down to 33. And then we have 7 grandchildren from the ages of 14 to 3. And what I want to tell you is how one of those grandchildren changed the trajectory of my life and my whole thought process. So I had a little teeny surgery it was called a fundoplication surgery for a hinal hernia. I bet a lot of you have these and they're no big deal. And most people don't ever even have to do surgery on them. But unfortunately, mine had twisted. And it's like a hernia like people have hernias in their stomach or umbilical hernias. If they twist, there's no blood flow to them, which means the tissue dies and opens up, and whatever's going through my esophagus would flow into my body. So I really didn't have an option but to have this surgery. So I went in for my surgery. It's in one day, I think I was out the same day. But I go in for this surgery, and when I came home, there was something not right. Like I thought I was just recovering from surgery. And I'm like, dang, it's getting really hard to bounce back from this. It wasn't my first surgery, right? And it was getting harder and harder to bounce back. But every time I ate food, I felt like somebody had poisoned me. Like it just did not sit well. It was painful. It zapped all the energy out of me trying to process it. And I started putting on all this weight. And I didn't even recognize myself. As a matter of fact, I would go out somewhere and people would say, oh, congratulations on your baby. And I would just say, I'm 50. So thank you very much for thinking that I could still have babies, but I'm not pregnant. And so this went on for a little while. I kept going to the doctors because intuitively I knew something was wrong. And I tell you to listen to your intuitive voice. Something wasn't right. Something had definitely changed. Well, several months later, much pain later, it was just getting worse and my stomach was getting huge. I finally found myself in the ER. And in so much pain, I was literally rolling. And if anyone who knows me, I delivered my 4 babies without one bit of pain medication. Like I'm pretty good when it comes to tolerating pain. When my gallbladder ruptured, my doctor said that I didn't take you serious. You didn't seem to be in enough pain, but I really was in a lot of pain. So when I was in there in pain, incredible pain, where I was rolling around begging for something, it was bad. So they did an ultrasound and they found a big mass in my stomach. And they were asked, I was so drugged up from the pain medications that I remember the technician coming in and saying, "What is your diet like?" I'm like, "Diet? What do you mean? I'm not on a diet." And they're now, "What do you eat? Do you eat hair?" I thought I was like losing my mind. "What do you mean, do I eat hair?" "No, I don't eat my hair." Well, I had a beezer. And so Steve, being a veterinarian, to this very day teases me that I had a hairball like a cat, but it wasn't hair. It was actually food. My vagus nerve during my surgery had been damaged and became paralyzed. So when I would eat, what your stomach normally does as far as contracting and moving food through could not do that. It became immobile. And I had mobility issues with whatever I ate. So let me tell you the miracle of our bodies. Your stomach will stretch and stretch and stretch. Yes, it does get painful later, but like, have you ever seen somebody who was obesely overweight, like hundreds of pounds, and you're thinking, how does their stomach get that big? Well, I'm telling you, it does. It's a miracle, right? And it's a curse, because if it just wouldn't go any further, maybe we'd only eat so much, but it does, it grows. And so I ended up having to have a surgery after seeing many specialists from UCLA to Cedars-Sinai, all these gastroenterologist specialists and motility issues. And their decision was the only option for me to get better was to have my stomach completely removed, which was a radical gastrectomy. And at that point, I'm done. I'm good for that. Let's do it. And so I went in to have a gastrectomy a week after my 5th grandson was born. So I was at his birth, and it was a really awesome day. I think I went in on April 5th for my surgery. So I was in there to have this surgery. They told me it would be a couple days because, I have scar tissue from the last surgery. So I'd be in there a few days. A few days ended up being close to 2 months. So I went in for this super easy surgery. I heal really well. I'm allergic to narcotics, so I use holistic stuff in the hospital to try to deal with any kind of pain issues. And I actually started feeling really good right after the surgery. I was starting to eat food, soft foods, because you can eat when you have a complete gastrectomy, but you're going to eat soft foods and smoothies, things like that. Starting to feel my strength come back. And one day, out of the blue, while I'm in the hospital about 5 days into my stay, this nurse comes in and frantically takes away my tray, my water, says, "You can't have anything, no food, no liquid." And I was like, okay, I thought maybe a test was coming. Well, where I had had my surgery, it had dehissed. And I don't know if you guys will know what dehissing is, but it's what they were afraid would happen with my esophagus, right? Where the surgery had been connected after the surgery, it had opened up. So everything I had been eating or drinking was pouring into my body cavity, which is extremely toxic. And I became very septic. I got sick, and I got sick fast. I can't even tell you how many things I was hooked up to. One of the reasons I'm so drawn to holistic medicine is because of my drug allergies. I'm allergic to sulfur drugs, penicillin, anything related to penicillin, most narcotics. Like, I have such a drug allergy list. And I didn't start out that way, by the way. I would take something, and then all of a sudden I notice a rash. The next thing I notice, the next time I'd have to take that drug, maybe a year or 2 years later, it was a swollen lips and the airway, swelling. So it wasn't something that just happened. It just sort of happened over time. So anyways, with all these drug allergies, it was really hard for them to treat me being septic. I had a collapsed lung. They were pulling stuff out of it was really bad. And whatever they were giving me was not good. I literally hallucinated. And to this day, that's something fun that we talk about, are all the crazy things I saw and did while I was sick in the hospital. The scary part is there is something they feed you called TPN. And it went into a tube. I had a PICC line at the time. So I was fed through this PICC line because I was sick and I couldn't have anything, no water, no ice chips, no food of any kind. I had not a bite of food through my lips for almost 4 months. Everything had to come in through my PICC line until everything was sealed back up. And the way they found this out is I had to drink this bright blue dye, and that's how they would know if I urinated it, it meant that it was not going through correctly. And so I remember crying every time I did it, and I would see the blue dye, like, how much longer is this going to take? I was so sick, I couldn't even go back in for another surgery because I wouldn't survive it. But in there, I kept a mindset, right? When my doctor would ask me, how are you doing, Jana? How are you doing today? I'd say, I'm fine, I'm good. When can I go home? And I would set these goals in my head. Okay, today's Monday. By this weekend, I'm going to be home. And the weekend would come. By the way, that is not a good plan, because the weekend would come and I felt completely defeated. I wasn't even better. I was worse. And I'm like, okay, by the end of the weekend, I will be better and I'll go home on Monday. And this was a game I played in my head for the entire time I was in the hospital. But as I started getting a little bit better, they found that the TPN they were feeding me was poisonous to me. My body just rejected it. And my organs were slowly shutting down. I was becoming malnourished, so my hair literally started falling out. My nails literally were coming out of the nail bed. And I could see and feel myself leaving this earth. I don't even know how else to explain it, but I could feel my life force leaving. And it wasn't because I wasn't fighting to be here. It was because I couldn't sustain myself to be here. About 2 months into the hospital stay, the doctors were so kind. And, by the way, this was an error. These were doctors' errors that got me here. I'm telling you, doctors' errors happen. They call it practicing medicine for a reason. There is always a risk. And that doesn't really mean that they did anything wrong intentionally, but things happen. And I totally understand that. And so when I was in the hospital trying to get better, they were so amazing to me. I mean, they would come in a couple times a day to check on me. But at the very end, when they knew that they had done everything possible and that I was just deteriorating, they asked me, do you want us to just make you comfortable, or do you want to go home? I wanted to go home. I walked in there with nothing really wrong with me except for a hernia that maybe caused indigestion now and then, to another surgery and dying. So I wanted them to stop touching me. I wanted them to stop pumping me full of stuff. I didn't know what it was. I just wanted to go home. So my doctor let me go home because he knew that Steve was even though he's a veterinarian, I mean, he knew enough to keep me going if something was going on. So they sent me home. I got to tell you about doctors stepping up. This doctor was a head of surgery at the hospital that I went to. And when he sent me home, for almost 2 months, every single day that I was home, he called me at 7:30 in the morning. Jana, how are you? How's everything going? Do you need anything? He checked on me every single day from his phone on his way, either out of surgery, into surgery, every single day for 2 months. I mean, that's dedication as a doctor. And people say, oh, I never hear of that anymore. It happens. I think he's retired now, but I know there's other doctors out there like him that care enough about their patients that they go that extra mile. When I got home thinking I was going to die, I was told it could take a few weeks. It just depends. Your kidneys are slowing down, your liver is shutting down. I was having huge heart issues. As I would wake up in the hospital, nurses would be surrounding me saying, can you feel that? Because I was in VFib constantly. So my body was saying goodbye. But when I came home, the first thing I got, of course, was a dose of my family. My daughter brought over my grandson, my 5th grandson, who was now 9 weeks old. And I was holding him. And it occurred to me that there was no way I was going to be able to leave a memory with him. He would not know the simplest things, like what it looked like when his Nana smiled at him, or how it felt when I grabbed his little cheeks and said, you're so cute, and put kisses all over him. The littlest, simplest things that absolutely cost nothing, but are things that people remember about you, how you smelled. I still remember smelling my grandmother's perfume and thinking, oh my gosh, that reminds me so much of her. Of course, I was much older when she passed, so I had a lot more memories to take. And I was desperate to create a memory with this 9-week old, not to mention my other grandchildren and my kids. Like, I need them to know how much they meant to me, how much they love me. So as sick as I was, by the way, your TPN comes in a backpack. My husband would go pick it up every 5 days. They would give you 5 days because otherwise it would expire. It was heavy and it would fit in a backpack. And then we plugged that into the pump, into the TPN pump, and it would pump into me for 18 hours. The first 4 or 5 hours, I couldn't even sit up. It was so strong, I couldn't sit up in bed. So here's the miracles that start happening. Where else in the world can I sit at my keyboard, sick and dying, and type in the words, desperate for health answers, and extend my reach all across the globe to find answers for me? The internet is a beautiful, incredible miracle. It's also where Satan lives. It is a scary ass place. You have to be smart. But at this point, if somebody told me, hey, Jan, I have some fresh chicken poop, and if you got that chicken poop and you rubbed it all over your face and you slept in it for 2 days, you are going to start feeling better. I had tried it. I did not want to leave here until I created that memory. This is where my new career came in. I immediately started typing in those words and seeing all this holistic stuff that I didn't know about. What are essential oils, right? I went to a meeting, someone put it on my grandson who was 9 weeks old, who had colic, and he stopped crying. Like, he can't fake that, right? How'd that work? Why don't I know about this? What is this stuff? And meditation, what? These are ancient things that we've had at our disposal for centuries. And we just aren't aware of it because we want something quick. We want something fast. I definitely wanted something quick and fast because I was leaving quickly and fast. But I started using holistic options. The biggest key for me getting well was my mindset. I did not think I was going to live because I was told I wouldn't. It never occurred to me that I was doing this to be here 9 years now. It's 9 years in April. This April was 9 years that I am still here. And I was told it wouldn't be possible. There was no way. Don't have a stomach. And I didn't miraculously grow back my stomach. That didn't happen. And I still have issues. I tell people all the time, if I eat, I throw up. I throw up 5, 6, 7 times on a good day. But I will take that over the option any day. It's really not that big a deal. I will take it. Sometimes it's a big deal, but mostly it's not a big deal. And whatever it is, I keep enough down to keep my body nourished. I drink a lot of protein shakes. I put protein in everything I'm drinking. I just get a high quality organic protein. But I eat what I want. If my husband makes ribs, I'm having some of those delicious ribs. I will end up throwing up in an hour, but they are good and I'm having them. So I kind of do what I want, but I also have to stay ahead of making sure I'm doing supplements, lots of natural stuff. But where the shift came for me was mindset. I didn't focus on the time I had left. I focused on the moment. How do I create this moment now? How do I let my grandson know how it felt to be kissed by me? How it felt to be held in my arms? What I smelled like? How do I make these memories that are going to last them after I'm long gone? But I also believe, by the way, that you take those beautiful memories with you. I was very superficial. And I got to tell you, I probably still am a little superficial. But I remember I had to have this Hermes bag. They're very expensive, but I wanted one. I saw a lady with one. She looked like she had it all together. And now I needed one. I had to have the Prada shoes. To me, when I had these amazing things and I walked into the room, people saw success. Wow, she must be really successful in her interior design business. By the way, I was, but having said that, it wasn't about the way I looked. It was about the way I represented myself with the confidence. It's about the way I related with my clients when I had that first meeting and they hired me. It wasn't about what I walked in wearing, holding, or the dang shoes that were giving me a huge blister. It wasn't about any of that. And I wasn't taking any of that with me. I found hope. I found hope online. I found hope in this beautiful holistic world. I found things I could change. The key that I keep skipping over was mindset. There was a shift in my mind. Again, it wasn't about surviving because I was told I wouldn't. It was about, what am I going to do with this moment? What am I going to lay here counting the hours off? Am I going to look over my will? Am I going to read about what happens to you after you die? No, it was about, I'm here. I'm here right now. And when people say you don't understand, it's depressing. Can I tell you, I don't get depressed. I was in panic mode. I was terrified every time somebody talked about how long do you have. I was panicked, terrified. It is dark. It is scary. And you're there alone. Nobody can relate to that. If you say you don't understand, and they're like, oh, yes, I understand. You're sad. You're scared. No, you don't understand. They don't. Nobody understands your journey like you do. But as I started getting well, as I started using beautiful essential oils and increasing that vibration in my body and taking in nutrients that I was able to keep down, finding ways to keep them in my system, right? As I started growing into this world, and a day went by, a week, a month, and I kept educating myself more and more. What are these things? What is mindset? How does that work? What is, all this holistic, beautiful stuff? And that's kind of how this whole podcast got created. I wanted people to know when they're at that stage that is really scary and really dark, and they're thinking nobody understands what I'm going through. Even me going through that, still don't understand what you're going through. I can relate to it a little, but we all have our different journeys. If you can understand, it doesn't matter if you do go tomorrow. It doesn't matter if you go in a week, 10 years. I keep telling people I'm going to be here till I'm 107. So hang on, because they're coming with me. And I mean it. Like, I truly mean that. My mind is preparing for that. I'm ready for that. And it's exciting. But if my life journey has a different choice, it doesn't matter, because every moment that I have been living has been exciting and full of memories. I'm not taking that Hermes bag. As a matter of fact, I think I donated it after all of this. I'm not taking Prada shoes that give me a blister that are super expensive. And this is no shame on those people who want to wear those and get those. I love them, so I get it. They're beautiful. But for me, what was my Prada, my new Hermes bag, were those beautiful memories that I thought I was not going to get any more of. Those became my world and my mindset. So for those of you who are listening who have a diagnosis that's scary, it doesn't matter what that diagnosis is, because you're here right now. You're here either listening to this podcast, you're reading, you're online searching for answers, which, by the way, I highly encourage. Another main reason that I started this is when I became a mindset coach and I started working with people online, they would come to me and I could tell I could not build trust and rapport with them. They kept waiting for me to sell them something. What is she going to sell me? Is she going to sell me those oils? Is she going to sell me that protein drink? She's got to be selling something. You know what? By the way, there's some pretty amazing products out there. You should try them. But when you're working with a coach, it should be all about you and your needs. And they won't know that right away. So if they meet you and say, oh, you need to try this, it'll help, they haven't taken the time to build that work relationship, that client relationship with you, and see what it is you're needing, what you're hungry for. And so definitely go out there and search online. It's a miracle that in my sick bed, I was talking to a woman in India. In my sick bed, I was connected with somebody in Singapore. Like, they were all over the world coming out with this incredible information for me. So it is a beautiful place, but put on your buyer beware hat. So when I created this space, it was because I wanted to shine a light on those people that I know are legit in what they're doing, that are out there to serve their clients. You know why? They have a story very similar to yours. They didn't think when they were 3 years old, 8 years old, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a woman who works with other women who are going through trauma. Nope, they went through trauma. And they, like me, changed their life around educating on that and then wanted to go out and educate others. So the people that I introduce you to on these podcasts are like that. They're sharing their powerful story of hope and how that moved them into what they're doing now and how they show up every day serving people. And so I do not know what you're going through right now, but I want you to know there is hope for you. That's what this whole podcast is about, sharing messages of hope out into the world when there's people who are in very scary, dark places. I just want you to know you're not alone. No, you're right. Nobody understands what you're going through. Nobody can understand that journey but you're not alone. And the first thing you can do for yourself is free, won't cost you a thing. Change your mindset. Find out what's beautiful in that moment and suck it up. Because what if you weren't here tomorrow? What you sure had a really good moment that day. I'm going to share, before I start winding this down, a little message from my mother-in-law. She had COPD and she had problems breathing on an oxygen tank. And then when it got worse, where you were increasing the oxygen, if it was off for a short time for her to go somewhere, like she would code. And she was getting, her organs were starting to shut down. And I thought, she was doing okay. But the day we went to see her, we were supposed to have dinner with her and we go in to see her, I immediately saw a person who was preparing to leave this world. You can just see their life force slipping from them. And we quickly took her to the hospital where she never came home from. But she was doing okay. And they would, when she coded, they would revive her. They'd get her on the right amount of oxygen. And when she realized that her life would be attached to that oxygen tank and it was coming, right? It was going to happen. And when she didn't know, she decided to discontinue treatment, which is amazing when you have a parent who can make that choice on their own and you're not forced into doing it for them. But she had decided that she was going to let nature take its course. So that day we brought all her family around her. We didn't know if she had weeks, hours. We didn't know because we're not God and we can't figure these things out. Who knew with me, right? 9 years later, and I'm going to be here till I'm 107. But her sister and her brother came to visit her. All her kids were around her. Her niece was getting married and she was having her bridal shower, like while Cheryl was in the hospital, and her future husband came to see her. And that was like the highlight of her day. She couldn't stop talking about it. But as everything started winding down in the day, she was looking out the window at the hospital, just kind of gazing off. And when I walked by into the room and it was just her and I, she reached over and touched my hand and said, "This was the best day ever." That was her last day. And it was the best day ever. And she took all of those beautiful memories that she made with us that day with her and left me with the best day ever. And I don't know if you can see the sign behind me, but there's a huge sign in our outdoor patio that says best day ever with a big rose on it because she loved yellow roses. But I don't care if it's my darkest day. If I'm still here and I'm still able to create those beautiful memories, it is my best day ever. Part of my journey and creating these memories, I got to tell you, this happened to me when I was 50, almost, so 9 years ago. So I'll be turning 60 for those of you who can do the math. I was able to run, and I'm not a runner. As a matter of fact, I hate it, and it was a one and done for me. But my daughter loves running, and she asked me to run a Ragnar relay with her. And I just said, yeah, because I'm coming from a place of yeah, and I can create this beautiful memory with my daughter. Little did I know that it was a 2-day, 200-mile Ragnar run. You didn't sleep. Only my own part of the run was just 3 legs, and I don't even know what it totaled up to. It wasn't a huge of the 200 miles because I was the oldest one in the run, so I wanted to make sure I didn't take that on. But I trained for it. It was horrible. I got blisters. I got chapped. When I did the last leg, it was so fast. I beat the band there and had to wait for them to come and switch off with the next runner. But it was one of the best memories of my life with my daughter, and my sister was with us. And it was incredible. There was 12 of us. I've gone and climbed to the top of Machu Picchu with my husband and some of our best, dearest friends. We went on an African safari together. We've been to Prague, and we've been to, let's see, Patagonia to see ice glaciers. We were supposed to go before the pandemic to see the tulips in Australia, or not Australia, but Amsterdam together. So these are the kind of memories that I'm creating now. I'm taking every moment and stuffing it into my soul so that if I leave, all that joy is coming. But I'm hoping through this podcast, through the magazine, through everything I do, that what I'm doing is putting that beautiful ripple effect of hope out into the world. So if you have a beautiful story of hope, I would love it if you came on the show and shared it. The show's getting really popular, so I'm super glad, but there is room for every story of hope. So just reach out to me. The link will be in the show notes. Reach out to me. I would love for you to share your story of hope, because remember, your story could be somebody's miracle they're waiting for. They want to connect with you. They want to know it's possible, that they too can survive. I survived gastroparesis with no stomach. And here I am 9 years later, having the best decade of my life. I cannot wait till I hit my 60s, because I know it's going to be phenomenal. So, yeah, I want you to start having the best decades of your life. I want you to be living in that moment. I want you to learn how to change that mindset. When you go to like my Instagram or any of my social media, it's weird that I'm posting quotes all the time, but here's why. Those positive quotes that you are casually scanning over, they're putting a blueprint in your mind. They're putting that message in there of where you want to be and where you want to go, and you aren't even aware of it. So I want you to go there and read them. Give me some feedback. Tell me you're loving it. Tell me you're hating it. Tell me you don't get it. I want to know. Go there and start leaving those messages. Please reach out to me if you have a story of hope. I want to give you a platform to share that story. And thank you guys so much for making my 1 year anniversary so special. I know we're going to play some voice messages that some of our past guests and some of our listeners had left, talking about what their experience with the show has been. And so I hope you enjoy those. Thank you so much for making this so special for me and showing me that I am on the right path, sharing your messages of hope with the world. So thank you very much. I hope that all of you guys have a wonderful, beautiful, memory-filled life. Thank you guys again for taking the time to listen.